1835. There is an amendment nature of a substitute that I would request to be adopted.
All right. Motion and second on adopt substitute. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, passes 2-0.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, what this measure does creates a mechanism whereby the funeral home may contact the insurance carrier and if certain information, verification of the deceased passing is provided to the insurance company, then the insurance company can divulge to the to the funeral home whether yes or no there was a life insurance policy, and if yes, who the beneficiary of that policy was. It will not allow them to violate any confidential provisions otherwise under state or federal law. It makes a provision whereby the funeral home may ask and the insurance carrier may provide. Permissible on both sides. It'll be the pleasure of the body. I've worked out the language with the insurance industry.
And this protects or requires written authorization for somebody's personal, private personal information.
Correct.
Okay. Is anybody to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Reggie Jones, representing American Council Life Insurance. Appreciate Delegate Orr working with us, and we're okay with the language as has been commented.
All right. Anybody against the bill? Motion to report and a second. Members wishing to vote on electronic voting board. For the record, Manoli needs to report. Kirk Plus Road, House Bill 1835 reports with a substitute 18-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Douglas Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have before you House Bill 2318. There is a substitute.
All right. I do have a motion to adopt the substitute. Okay, second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, Delegate Scully, tell us what we're doing here. It looks like we're marking out words.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. This relates to the birth-related neurological injury fund. Several years ago, in the first part of this section, line 12 were removed. Lines that we see later on, those specific words were immediate and post-delivery period. So when those were removed, it actually ended up setting up a conflict between the first part of this section and the last part of this section. The last part is beyond the enrollment period, so it no longer applies to any individuals. Removing this section should not impact anybody that's currently eligible for the fund. Additionally, there's an enactment clause at the back that says this is declaratory of existing law, so it does not bring in any new provisions to this bill or to this section.
I always ask, why do we need that?
This was actually brought to me by one of the judges on the Court of Appeals who said that this conflict between the two parts was actually impediment moving forward.
No, I was just asking why we needed that last, the provisions of the act are declaratory of existing law.
So it tells us. Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that it specifically indicates that this was not an intent of the legislature to change what the current policy is.
Y'all get to be.
A question for the patron. Chairman, I had some people who were totally ambivalent on your bill as introduced, but were terrified it was going to be amended in the vehicle to do some scary stuff. So what's the logic behind the original bill versus the substitute?
Mr. Chairman and Delegate Habib, in the original bill, we struck just the words that we thought were an issue. And as we did that, there are a lot of folks that actually thought that that would do harm and may actually open up the fund to several more claims than it would actually be available to it now. So by removing that whole section, which no longer applies, it is specifically intended not to create any new eligibility for this bill, and also to ensure that no one who is currently enrolled in this fund would be harmed by this.
So, Mr. Chairman, follow-up question. And so, it's not your intention to either affect anyone currently in the fund or to change the eligibility for anybody in the future of what types of injuries or what type of claimant could qualify for the fund?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
All right. That's your question? All right, anybody in the audience wish to be heard for or against House Bill 2318? Have a motion to report and a second. All those in favor, all those wishing to vote, vote electronic vote for it. Clerk will close the roll. House Bill 2318, report substitute 1980. Thank you, Delegate Stallings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Michu, 2303. This is a bill that, for the report, this is the bill that came out unanimously out of the Energy Subcommittee. It deals with agricultural net metering, and I believe there is a substitute on this bill. The substitute that's recommended by the substitute, so it came out 11 to 1, sorry. All right, not unanimous. All right, this is a substitute recommended by the substitute. Do I have a motion to adopt the substitute? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, Delegate Michu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief on your agenda. This is a piece of compromise legislation. It was one that was worked on through many meetings over the course of really last session.
Let me interrupt you right there, Delegate Michu. This is one that was assigned last year to a work group that worked out a lot of these over, I don't know, 8 meetings, 7 or 8 meetings, something like that, maybe more than that. But they came together and had about 3 or 4 bills, and they agreed on all the language.
The chair is correct, and I understand that there was some meetings in person and telephone conference in addition to that. And when the bill came out, Mr. Chairman, I think at the end of the subcommittee, I quoted Delegate Hugo or Shakespeare, I'm not sure who. Not that the perfect be the enemy of the good. There are other things in this bill that the many stakeholders probably can't support. We think it advances the ball for agricultural net metering. Edinburgh, Voltaire, Tim Hughes, and Shakespeare, so everyone can plan to each of that action. But Mr. Chairman, this is a bill that was well described in the subcommittee. It is one that I think has a large amount of support. There's bound to be some people who dislike elements of it, but that is the nature of the media product, Mr. Chairman. And even though I'm known for editing bills with my red pen, I did not do so in this situation. But I
We advise you not to, didn't we?
that you did, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
That's the question.
Yes, those in support of the bill, if you haven't, we don't want to go through the testimony that was given in subcommittee, but if you favor the bill, you can just stand up. That'd be fine. Thank you. I'll get group. I think we have one gentleman that wasn't able to make it the other night who is opposed to the bill. Yes, sir. Come forward and tell us your name.
Thank you. My name is Richard Cooper, Solar Services from Virginia Beach. We've been in the solar business in Virginia Beach since 1985, installing solar systems.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
Yes, and I'd like to speak against House Bill 2303. We've been installing small agricultural systems since the original agricultural net metering law was passed. About 50% of them are in co-op territories. Most of them are small systems. They're somewhere between 10 and 40 panels, so 2 to 10 kilowatts generally. We were not consulted by the Rubin Group when these meetings were taking place. None of the other installers that I have spoken to, there's many of them around the state, were consulted either. Most solar installers in Virginia, they're installing small systems. And by eliminating the ability systems in co-op territories. It removes a business opportunity that we've worked very hard to generate. The small installers are providing jobs and tax revenue to the state, and they help small farmers manage their operating costs. I propose that at the very least an amendment be added to require a report on who this bill is going to affect and how it's going to affect them. And I've got a copy which I would hope you would add to this bill.
And so your main objection is the electric co-op carve-out?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's about 50% of the agricultural net metering that we're installing.
All right. Thank you. Young and Michi, I don't know, you have an answer to that, why that happened?
The gentleman's right that there is a carve out of in the cooperative territories agricultural net metering. There's 2 years, Mr. Chairman, it goes from July 1, 2019, in which people can file in the co-op territories. After that, it's sunsetted. There can still be non-residential net metering. But what I will say is that a compromise means everyone gives something for the good of the whole, and part of that was the carve out the gentleman mentioned. So what he said was true. Again, that was part of the immediate product.
Yeah, I know that co-ops were, can you just tell the committee why that y'all were removed during this process?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd say that's part of the sausage making process originally. AgNet metering sunset across all utilities, and to bring larger consensus to the group, we extended it in perpetuity in the investor and utility territory, but that wasn't something that co-ops were comfortable having 2 programs running simultaneously. Something I want to reiterate is this does nothing to rooftop net metering. So any systems under 10 kilowatts that go on a roof, folks can do as it currently is. That's traditional net metering, not agricultural net metering.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's
10,
important.
that's pretty big.
10 kilowatts.
10 kilowatts, yeah.
Right. I think it's also important to note that this does away with agricultural net metering, but these folks would still have a choice to do the small agricultural generation or non-residential net metering, which they would still get full retail price for if they went through the non-residential route. So there still are options available. It's just the traditional agricultural net metering program is being eliminated.
Okay. I think Lee has a question.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment that I've been asked to at least offer the committee. Not vested in, but it does ask for reports to be presented to both you and to your Senate counterpart, Chairman of the Commerce and Labor Committee, talking about the production that actually comes from both these alternative programs for net metering. There may be someone who can give a little more detail on it, but I have a copy of it, and I simply offer for consideration for the committee.
Do we have copies of that? Okay. Thank you, Bob. Okay, so basically it's asking at the end of the 2-year period, not later than November 30th, 2018, the commission shall provide a report to Senate CNL, House CNL that includes for each electric co-op individually and for all electric co-ops in the aggregate, and then et cetera, list a bunch of items. Is that your amendment?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Did you all consider this here? Actually, step aside there. Let me ask. Did y'all consider any amendments like this?
We didn't consider this specific. There was, in the vast range of things that we considered to get to where we got to, commission proceedings. Those are very expensive for electric co-ops. On the smaller end, they're at $50,000. On the larger end, they go well over $100,000, and this would be per co-op. So that's very financially burdensome for us. And quite frankly, I think this is information that would be available that doesn't necessarily require a full commission proceeding. But we'd be happy to share. We're happy to sit down and talk with anyone. I think you'll find we're some of the most transparent folks
That may be the best way to handle this. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I just explained the nature of this is, it didn't call for a proceeding, it simply asks for data that the commission is already collecting on these programs to be reported to the committee prior to the expiration of the existing net agricultural metering program, so that you can make an informed decision on how the two opportunities are performing side by side.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on. Yes. Joe King.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just speaking very briefly to the bill, Mr. Chairman, and you might know, you just mentioned that out of the subcommittee, this ended up with an overwhelming support with one exception, and that was my no vote. And I regret that I voted no on this, and I wanted to explain to you just very briefly why I'm doing that. And my good friend Doug Lynch did a great job of presenting this bill, and as he explained just now, this is still a work in progress. This is still the art of trying to get something done, notwithstanding the perfect that's out there. We want to make sure that we get something done. So I do support that part of that. I think as the Senate side has also been considering these issues, and the bills will be coming over, and then we'll be sending our bills over, I think that we still have a number of opportunities for all the stakeholders to get together, to come together and try to see if there's any way we can find some common ground consensus to the extent that we can try to move the ball even a little bit closer to the perfect that Mr. King and others have just mentioned. So in that spirit of urging all of the stakeholders to continue to work together, especially those, as you know from the Tuesday night conversation, there are some organizations that didn't feel that their issues were quite advanced during those conversations, specifically some of our friends in the environmental movement. And so to the extent that they can have that conversation again, I wanted to just send the signal that this isn't unanimous, that we're not just rubber stamping something that came out of the process, but that we're also scrutinizing to see if there's a way we can get a little bit further to the better bill. So in that spirit of us trying to work together, I'm casting a no vote, but it's nothing against what that Doug Minshew has done or the working group has done. I wanted to explain that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Doug Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the spirit of Delegate Keem's conversation, I will simply suggest that the amendment that I've offered might be best considered in the course of these ongoing conversations.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak for or against? All right, members prepared to vote? Yeah, I thought we had a motion. We have a motion. Members prepared to vote by electronic voting. You go. Clerk will close the roll. 2303 before substitute 18 to 2. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think all we have left would be committee members who are here. Here. We got Doug here. Heritage. Delegate Simon. 2430 automatic renewal offers and continuous services.
I believe there's a substitute, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I could just talk to the chair. The substitute makes some technical corrections. The reason we're doing the substitute is because the little corrections that are throughout, they're not major substantive changes to what the bill tries to do. This, in some ways, is similar to the bill that we had on the floor with Delegate Alwell. In fact, just this morning, I got an email saying my credit card has been charged, or my PayPal account has been charged another $160 today for my one-year subscription to Prezi. And so,
Yes. Have a motion. Yes. Lay the bill on the table. Second.
non-debatable.
Non-debatable. All right. Have a motion and a second to lay the bill on the table. Non-debatable. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, looks like the ayes have it.
Thank you,
All right,
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Heritage. Delegate Phillips. You want to? Yes. have a motion we adopt the substitute use?
So moved.
All right, have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, the motion, that's before us. All right, tell us what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Before you is HB 2267. It's very simple. I think you've seen this before. It's legislation that would enable a physician to write prescriptions for a year's supply of contraception and allow a woman to purchase a full year supply in a single trip to the pharmacy under her insurance plan if it's in the physician's best clinical judgment, dispensing a year's supply is appropriate for that particular patient. There's a substitute before you, and which does three things very briefly. It amends 3 sections at the suggestion of the State Corporation Commission Bureau of Insurance, and it narrows the definition of provider to avoid encompassing any people or entities that would not generally dispense contraceptives. Second, it changes the effective date of implementation to January 1st, 2018. And third, it adds a new subsection F that ensures the legislation would not require hormonal contraception dispensed from out-of-network pharmacies or providers to be reimbursed by health benefit plans. Allowing women to pick up full years of birth control makes it easier for them to use birth control consistently and effectively, which obviously, after all, is our goal. Helps women eliminate gaps in birth control use. And the study shows that it actually may save money, both for women and the health benefit plans, and also reduce the incidence of unintended pregnancies and abortions. Health experts, including the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, agree that providing women a 1-year supply of birth control is good public health. A 2011 study in the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of California, San Francisco, saw a 46% decline in the odds of an abortion when low-income women who relied on public programs for contraception received a 1-year supply of birth control pills at one time instead of the usual 1 to 3 month intervals. The lead doctor, Diana Foster, concluded that the evidence indicates that health plans and public health programs may avoid paying for costly unintended pregnancies by increasing dispensing limits on oral contraceptions. Quickly, I just wanted to preempt some of the arguments that we've heard previously.
Somebody wants to ask you a question?
Yes.
All right, Delegate Bell, or has a comment?
I don't know if it's for the patron or for the chairman. I no longer know what is the mandated benefits commission or what goes or how the things get there. I just see that this is something we're telling insurance companies to do. Is this? I will listen to the testimony knowing better if we know what sort of what happens.
Has this been before the mandated? Frank, has this been before the mandated care
The patron knows, but I'm not sure.
I don't believe it's been sent to the Health Insurance Reform Commission for review, because I'm not sure that it creates a mandated coverage for this type of prescription. It's only the method of how frequently it's dispersed in 12 months rather than on a monthly basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, no problem. So there's a few arguments that we've heard previously, and I just wanted to preempt them quickly. We've heard about the mail issue. I've heard suggestions that women were able to take advantage of prescriptions that come to you by mail automatically every 30 to 90 days under many insurance plans. Unfortunately, some of the plans, some insurance and health benefit plans do not offer this option. The ones that do are not required to make physicians and women aware of it. Also, there's certain barriers that prevent women from taking advantage of this option, not limited to those that are on travel, for work, or for otherwise, those that change residence, and also the difficulty for some that live in rural areas. More difficult to get to post offices, et cetera. Not to mention those that have potentially disabilities or issues with unreliable transportation. This bill is about allowing physicians to practice medicine according to the unique needs of their patients. Another issue we've heard about is storage. Birth control pills do not require any certain kind of storage, and the physicians that you'll hear from in a few moments can speak to that. Waste, I've heard waste is an issue as well. I know the average cost to insurers of covering hormonal birth control for 1 year is between $160 and $600, while the average cost to insure of pregnancy and childbirth obviously is over $20,000.
Can I ask you a question? What's the most you can get a prescription for right now? A month, 2 months?
I believe it's 90 days.
90 days? Okay.
A physician's not required to prescribe a 12-month supply of birth control, which is important to note here, if they don't feel that the patient would be ready to, that it wouldn't be appropriate or wouldn't be able to manage it. But it allows them to customize the care based on unique needs for each individual. I hope it'll be the pleasure of the body to pass this bill. I do, Mr. Chairman, do have a few physicians that are here to speak and a few other individuals. And I do press for time.
You have a question, it's actually not the substantive part, there's terms that are defined that I'm surprised aren't already defined terms, so I just wanted to see if we were using them differently, things like healthcare, covered person, health benefit plan, provider. Are those definitions from elsewhere, is there anything unique about how we're using them? I know those are not the substantive part of the bill. I'm just curious if those are picked up from somewhere. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we just pick up existing definitions and then we add the substance at the bottom.
Right, I believe, Mr. Chairman, I believe this is taken from already other existing sections. This is not unique to this bill.
Yeah.
I believe, is that right?
That's correct. It's copied and pasted from other places rather than cross-reference it by.
Can't just cross-reference.
I guess you could have, but then there's a change in that section.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it was recommended that we do it this way, but we don't.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins. I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist. I live and practice in Henrico County. I was born and raised in Hampton, Virginia, and I went to medical school at UVMS in Norfolk, Virginia. I did my residency training at Duke University Medical Center and a research fellowship at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where I earned a Master of Public Health degree with a concentration in epidemiology. So I'm here today in support of House Bill 2267. As mentioned, it gives women the option of receiving 12 months of birth control pills at a time, so that when I and other qualified medical professionals decide that it's medically appropriate, women can receive a full year supply of pills. To be clear, this is not a mandate that women must receive 12 months. It simply makes the option available where the option currently doesn't exist in our state.
We have a question.
Sure.
Just a quick question, as I'm still trying to skim through the bill. So, two real quick questions. One had to do with, and I'm certainly not utilizing it, but seasonal is something that is new on the market, right? That you only take every so often, and then there's also, what if you get a whole year's supply, and like many times people will misplace them or whatever, what do they do when they can no longer find their supply for the whole year? What happens then? Do they have to pay for it for the second batch, or how does that work?
I think that's an insurance dependent question on how, whether or not the insurance will replace it. That's not something that I can speak to specifically.
We can ask them.
We can hold those till they come out.
Okay, thank you.
So the option needs to be available for a number of reasons. It may be a burden for women because they work long hours or multiple jobs to get to the pharmacy. Rural women may travel a distance from the pharmacy. But for me, one of the most compelling reasons is that if you are concerned about reducing unintended pregnancy and reducing abortion like I am, there's very compelling scientific evidence that this type of legislation accomplishes that. There was a very large study, over 84,000 women in this study, and it showed that the odds of unintended pregnancy were reduced by 30%, the odds of abortion were reduced by 46%. So I, again, urge you to support this bill for the reasons I outlined and the reasons that my colleagues will mention. Thank you so much for your time and cooperation.
Yes, sir.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm Aaron Zolberg. I'm an OBGYN practicing here in Richmond, live here. I won't kind of reiterate that. I stand behind everything Dr. Rankin said. I think that common people will say. I can say, as a physician who gives medication, whether it be birth control or anything else, the quickest way I can annoy a patient is not responding to the refill request, delaying their ability to get the medication. I've had a couple patients over the months, professional women who have high-paying, high-powered jobs, work out of the country, and if they don't have a bag, they can go without it. And the underserved, I don't think I need to go into statistics. If you're underserved, they're hard to get. It's not a mandate. It doesn't cost a dime, but it removes a hassle. And I have missed my own medication because it's kind of a pain in the butt when you work hard to get to the pharmacy. So it's a simple thing that I think, regardless of your political persuasion, is kind of easy to get over. I hope you guys support this bill.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't try to slow the train down. All right, so I think I can understand the point that the lady before said about, the upfront?
I think no, but the real critical thing is if I give blood pressure medicine, I ask the patient to come back and reiterate whether it's the correct thing. Birth control, I'll often decide whether the patient comes back, but the flip side is that should be the decision between the doctor and the patient. If I need to see them in follow-up, I will, but women take birth control for years, so it's.
I understand. So you're saying that you think that you should be able to give the blood pressure medicine 12 months in advance if you decide as the doctor and that's in conjunction with the patient. I'm not necessarily against that because if I take high blood pressure medicine, I don't want to go, I'm probably as busy as any other person and I don't want to go to the pharmacy every 30 days. So could you do that with, all right, so assuming that the doctor and the patient said that it'd be okay to do it with high blood pressure medicine, your position is they should be able to do that, right?
No, I'm here to support this bill. I'm not an expert in blood pressure medicine. I was just using that as an example.
What about
physician-patient kind of relationship? So I can't comment on others. So I support this bill as written.
I understand. Well, but I know we can't just look at things in silo. I mean, we have to, because next year we're going to be talking about the high blood pressure medicine. Or if someone has, let's say they take a statin, okay? And there are millions of people that take statins, and millions of people that are very busy, and statins are something you stay on for your whole life. So would it be okay? I'm just trying to figure out why is it in place that people can't get their statin for 12 months? Do you know?
No, I'm an OB/GYN. I can't answer that question, and it's kind of off topic for the substance.
But you're a doctor. All right, so no, I know. I'm just.
But I think it's important that we determine that. So I think it's important that they determine that. The high blood pressure doctor should determine it. In this case, I support the bill as written. Getting sidetracked on that is not something I'm prepared to.
He's loud. He's not ready.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be. This is just the way I talk. That's the way I talk. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not. This is the way I talk.
I'm happy to meet individually to go over these, but I think in this context, I don't want to miss.
I'm a Greek child.
I'm in danger of misspeaking if I start talking about it.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I wouldn't. I understand.
Alex Byron does have a question.
I have a question for something you mentioned, and maybe I misunderstood you, but you were talking about having, about being busy and having to come back and get a refill. I thought most prescriptions, even 90-day ones, have a year expiration. Some out of that doctor, I thought were even longer for refills. Why can't it just have refills on it? For one, is what you mentioned. So if it changes to a year supply, is that your supply of a refill, or does it end then and they have to come back to you in a year anyway?
Well, the bill's written, it provides up to 12 months, so presumably you would revisit with your doctor whether you're going to continue that.
But there's,
yeah.
But following up on that, so there isn't anything that prevents you from putting refills on it, though?
No, but it still creates a burden and access, and I think this bill solves that.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, I actually have a medical question. I don't know if you would be the right one to answer.
She might be.
Maybe you're the right one to answer. So I'm going to betray my ignorance a little bit. I think I really like this bill. I take 2 medications every single day of my life, multiple times a day, because I have Crohn's disease. And my understanding is the reason that it wouldn't be appropriate for me to get a 12-month prescription is because they have to check my blood levels and they have to make sure I've had any flare-ups and that kind of thing. And so I think that's why, for my medication, 12 months wouldn't be appropriate. Is the type of birth control covered by this the type that we don't need to incentivize a return to the doctor or checking blood levels because of the nature of it?
That is exactly correct. So good afternoon. My name is Dr. Wendy Klein. I'm a board-certified internist, a practicing clinician, and associate professor emeritus, whose area of specialty is women's health for the last 30 years. Co-founded the VCU Institute for Women's Health, deputy editor of the journal Women's Health Spoke. And I'm an internist, so I do treat blood pressure, and I can answer some of those questions. The point you made is exactly correct. It is the standard of care to write when a woman is established on birth control pills. This is, again, the determination depends on the provider. You don't necessarily see a woman and immediately give her 12 months. You might try her on a birth control pill and give her 3 months and then get her to come back. And she's doing fine now. And now you want to give her 12 months. There is no reason to have her come back again in a year, she may need her pap smear, but there is no other reason to bring her back. The standard of care is when there are no medical contraindications to give a year's worth of refills, but they're not allowed to pick up more than a few packs at a time. So let me give you a scenario, because the other thing is, in addition to contraception, you've already heard it works better if women have more packs on hand. But they're used for many other reasons besides preventing pregnancy. They regulate menstrual cycles, they reduce heavy bleeding, they diminish painful cycles, they reduce the risk of ovarian cysts. You don't want women to stop these. The thing is, the difference between this and a blood pressure medicine is, in order for it to work, consistency is critical because of the impact on the menstrual cycle. So let's take a woman who has her 3 packs of pills. She's a working parent, juggling a job, her children's activities, her aging parents, her household. She lives in the Northern Neck or in Cumberland County or in Rockingham, and the nearest drugstore is over 30 minutes away. She's been trying to get to the drugstore. She can't get there. She finally gets there, but she's 2 weeks late. So now she starts her new packs, but she's already ovulated and she's at risk for pregnancy. Or she's been on these pills to regulate her cycle and prevent severe, heavy bleeding that made her anemic. Because she's 2 weeks late, she starts bleeding and her problems start all over again. So consistency it's different. I mean, there is a serious impact. Here's the other scenario that was mentioned. A college student is going overseas to study abroad. She's well established on her contraceptive pills. I would like, as her physician, for her to stay on them while she's gone. But the pharmacy is not allowed to dispense the number of packs that she needs. What now? So there are countless medical reasons why providers should be the ones to determine how many pill packs are dispensed. In fact, I'm at a loss to understand why I'm even standing here before the Commerce and Labor Committee discussing the importance of menstrual cycle control. It is not as though these are expensive medications that cost $1,000 a month. These are pills that cost $9 a month at Walmart. And to insult women and say they may lose or misplace their pills, well, do you, if you wear glasses, do you lose or misplace your glasses? You just, I mean, they don't. That's not to say there are exceptions. So Virginia women should be able to pick up up to a year's supply of oral contraceptives in a visit to the pharmacist, so they don't have to make unnecessary trips, for the simple reason that it works, and there's no medical reason to restrict access to that which works best. So with the greatest of respect, I would ask this committee, why wouldn't you leave this decision to physicians and avoid over-regulating access to these pills? I urge you to support the bill.
I want to interrupt you just a minute to see, okay, I mean, you're fine if you're finished, but I was going to interrupt the flow of things normally. Do we have anybody against the bill before I start taking everybody for the bill? Let me see what your arguments are, and then I'll come back.
One other.
Just 1 second.
Chairman, trying to help Bill. Chairman would like
Yeah, I got one correction to make on line 51. At the end of the line, that should be, instead of 17, that should be 18, 2018. Do I have a motion to make that? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. All right, Doug, tell us why you think this is a good idea.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Doug Gray, Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. I just wanted to share some basics about how we deal with these access today. Health plans offer 90-day prescriptions through the mail with an automatic refill. And so, you know, if you set it up that way, you don't really have to worry. It's going to come right to you. And so it makes sense to us to do it that way, and you're not necessarily getting a larger amount that you actually need. And that kind of addresses the concern. If you do a whole year, you're going to end up with some pills that get wasted if you change your strategy throughout the year. If you're going to travel, our plans have exemptions, so you can get a year's worth. But as a standard policy, 90 in the mail with an automatic refill is how we handle it. There are a number of companies who are now offering the 90-day at a retail location as well. So we offer pretty good opportunities to get access today. And as you know, the ACA makes these available with no cost.
Doug Lepasi.
All right, if I had let's say my doctor decided that he wanted to have he wanted to give me high blood pressure medicine, he wanted to give me 6 months of it. Okay, I'm just curious. Is there a reason why he can't do that? Is there a financial reason? Why are these people here? Why can't they do this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm not an expert as to why the standard is set the way it is, but typically people do things on a monthly or a 90-day basis if you're on a maintenance drug. And so people with a high blood pressure medication that they're going to take for the rest of their life would typically do an automatic refill either at retail or at a mail order level. Typically, the mail order level is easier and less expensive to the patient, so that's typically what they do. But we don't see prescriptions written in excess of that. So, but in answer to your specific question, Delegate Lepasi, I don't know the history of it.
All right. Thank you. Quickly, I think we'll have one more against real quick. Two more against. All right. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Jeff Caruso with the Virginia Catholic Conference. Two specific concerns about the bill. I think one, we believe it would be a skewed public policy to take one particular drug and single it out for different treatment than all the rest in our code. And then secondly, we think it would go too far for legislatures to impose this sort of requirement on health plans rather than giving them the latitude to make these decisions. So for those two reasons, we oppose the bill. Thank you.
One more against, and we'll go back to the floor. I'm just trying to figure out what your reasoning was.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Robert Barada here on behalf of American Health Insurance Plans, and I'll just make two quick points. The first is on line 17 and 18, it appears that the bill will carve out the state health plan, so this won't apply to the state health plan because it specifically says it's not covered as a mandate. Yeah, just direct your attention to that. The second thing is getting to Delegate Lepasi's point about opening the floodgates. And I personally am on a medication that I take every day that if I don't take it, I run the risk of a catastrophic arrhythmia. That's pretty serious. And what I do is I get my drugs by mail order every 90 days, 2 weeks before the next shipment comes in.
I've got a question.
So I hear you. I'm in the same boat. My question is, and I asked the other gentleman who's up here, is there a reason? Is there economic reason? Or is it just, this is just the way it's always been done? Because to me, what they're saying makes sense. And if there's not an economic reason, then I don't see why are we arguing.
There's a couple. Mr. Chairman, to answer your question, there's several reasons. One is an economic reason, and it gets to whether a physician or something could happen somewhere along that 1 year that you've got this whole tranche of drugs for, that you go back in and the physician changes your prescription. The chances of that happening in a 90-day period are much less than in a year period. For instance, now I can speak on a personal basis, I'm on maintenance drugs at my advanced age, and I was on a drug for 8 years, and I was getting on every 30 days, and suddenly something happened, and so I had to go and change that particular drug that I had been on. And I had a whole year's supply of those stocked up in my house. That's a wasted drug. I can't turn it back.
Okay. All right.
So anyway, I just want to caution you that I'll be back here next year for my maintenance drugs to get a year's supply.
Thank you.
Move to report.
Second. All right. Any more discussion? I think Delegate Byram had.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned. I mean, we're all feeling good now. This sounds great, but I'm a little bit concerned about the unintended consequences. And I don't know why, one of the individuals, in fact, that spoke for you, Delegate, mentioned they didn't know why they were in front of Commerce and Labor, and I would have to agree with that. I mean, this bill should have gone to the Healthcare Commission or a group of doctors and that are dealing with the pharmaceutical prescribing of these drugs and making decisions, because we don't know how it affects the other drugs or our rate system or the state healthcare plan or any of those things. So, I mean, you can all vote it out of here, but I'm just saying, I have, you know, to say, you better think about if there's any unintended, if there's not unintended consequences, then go for it. But,
You go.
I just had a question for the patron. So is the bill, are you trying to expand the parameters of your offering, or is it literally just 3 months to 12 months?
Literally 3 months, Mr.
Just-
Chairman.
And that's because I see what you're trying to do. Here's my question, because I think you're right in the end goal, but if what they said that you get an automatic in the mail re-up and they mail them almost automatically, what's the challenge there if you get it? Because I understand you want to get the pills on a regular basis, make sure people don't run out, but if they can have an automatic prescription renewal that comes, that you just sign up for, how is that any different really than what you're trying to do? That's my
Mr.
question.
Chairman.
Yes.
Delegate Hugo, as I mentioned earlier, number one, not all the plans have the automatic renewal. Number two, there are a lot of women that actually travel, whether it's for work or for other reasons, and they're unable to be at home. There's others in rural areas that, they're not able to get to the post office, they have to travel. As we heard one of our witnesses testify, half an hour to do so.
All right, Delegate Ransom.
Mr. Chairman,
We got a motion in a second.
Just
Go ahead.
real quick, I appreciate that Delegate Phillicorn has brought this. While we can get a prescription for 12 months, we can only get a 3-month supply. I support the bill, and I'm going to vote in favor of it.
All right, Delegate Corey, you got a question or?
No, I do not have a question, sir. I simply wanted to thank Delegate Phillicorn and all the people who came here to support the bill.
All right, our members have a motion and a second. Members, we're ready to vote. Any other? Okay. All right, members will vote electronic voting. Not working.
Close the roll.
All right, close the roll. 22, December for substitute. Thank you, Delegate. Yeah, sorry to catch y'all short, but we got a lot going on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Delegate, oh, Delegate Heritage, you're here, okay. Delegate Heritage, what's your number?
2419.
2419, give Delegate Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Please forgive my cold. House Bill 2419 is basically a child protection bill for
Wait,
workers.
just a second, use the early substitute.
I would have to apologize. I believe there is.
I do have a motion we adopt the substitute. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Motion to adopt substitute. Delegate here, explain the substitute.
Mr. Chairman, 1 second. I'm sorry, can I get a copy of something? I don't seem to have it in my book.
That won't be there. He's handled it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the substitute, well, if I could explain the basic bill first, then I could explain the substitute. Basically, Mr. Chairman, the bill itself is a stop-loss bill to try to protect Virginia jobs and call centers. This bill in general would apply to call centers employing 50 or more employees. It has two basic components. The public call centers which service the public through the Commonwealth of Virginia, and private call centers which do other things. The bill itself, Mr. Chairman, would deal with public call centers looking to transfer employees comprising 30 or more % of their total call volume in Virginia, previously in Virginia, to foreign countries, and would ask them to identify 120 days in advance of any foreign relocation to the Commonwealth for evaluation. And basically, what it would do would be to make ineligible, render that company ineligible for a 5-year period to receive any direct or indirect grants of state funds, loans guaranteed by the state, or tax credits or reductions. In other words, Mr. Chairman, so that Virginia taxpayer funds would not follow companies that relocate call centers out of Virginia to foreign countries and cost Virginians their jobs.
Can I ask you this? I've had a little bit of experience in this.
Yes.
Right now, under the WARN Act,
Yes.
these, if you have 100 or more employees, you have to give 60 days notice.
Yes.
Is that right?
This is less employees, more notice.
Right. Less employees, more notice. Okay.
And again, this doesn't stop anybody from doing that, Mr. Chairman. It simply gives the Commonwealth a heads up so that Virginia taxpayer funds will not follow a company that does this. It doesn't stop the job loss. It simply means that tax benefits, loans, benefits conveyed by the Commonwealth to keep those call centers employing Virginia residents does not leave with the employees themselves.
What's your time that you set up?
120 days, Mr. Chairman.
120 days.
Yes. And I think that's fair given, basically the planning in the industry goes a lot further out than that, is my understanding. So 120 days, I don't think works a terrible disadvantage to companies that are planning to relocate not only these jobs to other states, but more importantly to foreign countries. Those are planned well in advance.
Delegate Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Harrington.
Yes, sir.
Right here.
Yes, sir.
I have a cough drop. You want one?
You know, I would, actually.
I'm not trying to bribe you, but, yeah, you gotta report that.
That is true by partisanship, Mr. Chairman.
You hadn't heard my question yet, so.
Give me something to choke on while I'm listening.
All right, so first of all, line 28.
Yes, sir. Are we talking the amendment or the existing bill?
The
It's a
substitute.
substitute.
Yes, sir.
It says any employer. So public, private, stock held, non-stock held,
Yes, sir.
any employer.
Yes, sir.
All right, so why are we just singling out call centers? How about any other type of business that leaves Virginia and goes offshore? And if you want to see some, come to my part of the state and I'll show you some.
And Mr. Chairman, I would say to the gentleman that, that we're starting with call centers. I certainly agree with the sentiment that we need to protect Virginia jobs any way we can. This is the first bite at that apple. I can tell you, sir, that in the past few years, I believe 6,000 Virginia jobs have been lost with call center relocation. 6,000. In the past year, in 2016, the city of Hampton alone, almost 400 employees lost their jobs. I can look at other examples. Richmond lost 600 jobs in 2012. Henrico County lost 400 jobs in 2015. These are jobs that we can avoid. And by the way, when state funds are supporting these businesses, private industry, and they take those jobs elsewhere offshore, and our tax dollars fall them, Mr. Chairman, I think that we would all probably agree that we probably have better uses for our tax incentives than this. We have to protect the jobs, especially in areas of the state that are underserved and underemployed. We have to maintain these jobs. And I was saying to the gentleman, looking at call centers operated by D&B, for example, in Alta Vista and in South Boston, there's been a source of gainful jobs. There's very little turnover in those jobs, and those jobs average paying $35,000 a year to start. I would say to the gentleman, Mr. Chairman, those are types of jobs in Virginia we need to keep and hang on to tenaciously. And that's what this bill does. It doesn't deprive a private entity or private employer from making those business decisions that they choose to make to take our jobs overseas. But it certainly reduces the tax incentives that they have, the benefits that they receive from us in doing that. And that's all this bill does. On the flip side, Mr. Chairman, for entities that perform services for the Commonwealth of Virginia, this bill would also require that those jobs beginning in 2019 be performed entirely within the Commonwealth of Virginia. Now, I recognize that's a difference in, under current contracting. I do understand that there are a good many call centers operated by a number of state agencies which answer the phone in other places. But, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, I think that we owe our people a little bit more responsibility.
Where is that? I'm trying to find that.
This would be in the existing bill, Mr. Chairman, in,
Line 60.
68 in going down.
Okay, okay.
So the call centers operating under existing contracts to the extent that they possibly can, and we recognize we have longer term contracts than that, which would not be upset by this bill. We would recognize that going forward, beginning of July 1st, 2019, that as many possible jobs as we can, answering state telephones essentially, are actually answered by Virginia residents, by Virginia workers.
Mr. Chairman, I had another question. I didn't know if he was going to filibuster.
I'm sorry. I just use that good cough drop.
My problem is that we have quite a few call centers in our area, and they are competitive situations where they try to get this company business from here. I think if we pass this, why is the next call center that's looking at Virginia now, if they see this, this is going to be a disincentive for them to show up in Virginia?
Well, I would say to the gentleman, Mr. Chairman, that it would be a disincentive if they're looking to the state to help support their activities here. If they're looking for tax breaks, if they're looking for loans, if they're looking for grants from the Commonwealth of Virginia, yeah, it might cause them a pause. But by the same token, I think we have good workforce here. I think the gentleman's district is a lot like mine, where we could put a lot more people to work than currently have jobs. I think it offers some stability and some incentive for those entities to locate in our localities, give our folks jobs, and then hold them there, even when it might be marginally preferential in terms of finances to take it to a foreign country. And remember, what we're talking about here is taking these jobs offshore, not to North Carolina, not to West Virginia. We're talking about taking them to India. We're talking about taking them to other localities, other foreign localities. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this bill. And I realize, Mr. Chairman, it may not be perfect, but as I told the gentleman, it's the first bite at a very large apple.
Delegate Habib.
Sure.
That's a series of questions. I'll try to go as quick as I can, but could I ask a few?
Yes.
I don't ask this first one to be condescending, I just ask as a shortcut. Are you familiar with the elements of the WARN Act and when it applies and all that at the federal level?
I'm vaguely familiar, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
but I can't speak to the judge.
And the only reason I was asking that, so the WARN Act, of course, applies, it's federal law, when you're a qualifying employer, when you're gonna take a qualifying employment action,
Right.
you have to give a certain type of notice, there's a bunch of exceptions, there's all kinds of stuff. The data points that qualify both an employer, an action, and the notice under here are different from the WARN Act, and so that's why I asked that previous question was, what's the logic behind shrinking the size of the company, shrinking the size of the negative act, getting rid of the exceptions the WARN Act has, and extending the 60 days to 120 days?
Mr. Chairman, I'd say to the gentleman that it's my understanding that federal law would preempt certain aspects of perhaps some of this. Certainly this bill does not intend to preempt or otherwise overcome federal law. I do think that, and again, my understanding of the WARN Act is imperfect, I would frankly admit. But I would say to the gentleman that to the extent that we can implement these provisions, again, it protects Virginia workers.
Yeah, well, so what my question was, so what I'm saying, I actually don't think it's a preemption question. You can have a state consequence for employment action and a federal consequence. What I'm saying is you've shrunk the employers that applies to, the number of employees, you've lowered the threshold before it kicks in for termination, you've extended the notice period, those types of things. And I'm just asking if there was some logic related to the WARN Act, how you came to those data points of when it kicks in.
Frankly, Mr. Chairman, I'll say to the gentleman that we try not to make it as restrictive as the WARN Act. We try to broaden it out just a little bit to give employers and businesses a little bit more time to deal with these things and give the Commonwealth a little bit more time to react.
So it's actually the opposite because it covers smaller employers, requires less negative action, requires twice as long notice. That WARN Act notice, Chairman Coburn, I've dealt with enough for some of our clients. It's actually oftentimes hard to comply with because of the vagaries of markets. So 120 days is a long time. Even that 60 days in the WARN Act is tricky. Again, all these questions actually aren't to cause problems with the bill. I'm just trying to understand if there's a difference with these businesses. I'll tell you where Delegate Marshall is right. You do create a disincentive with the civil penalty provision. That is a total disincentive to business coming in. It is not a disincentive, I frankly kind of agree with you, to say if we're giving you state grants or state preferential treatment, if you turn around and screw us, you ought to lose it. sort of philosophically don't have any problem with if we apply it to the right actions. I think and then the WARN Act has these certain exceptions that are built in, and you can look through them, and you know, they're faltering company and unforeseen circumstances, natural disaster, there's exceptions. But the issue to me is if you're going to create a civil penalty that's pretty significant in here, I think that if you're looking to open in Danville or Greensboro, this is a big disincentive to come to Virginia. But if all you're saying is, look, you don't have to come here, and we'll give you some money to come here, but if you take the money and you turn around and leave, you lose the benefit of it, that I actually philosophically wouldn't have any problem with.
I think, Mr. Chairman, the reason I'm saying, gentlemen, the reason we put this fairly draconian sanction in this bill is to make sure that companies that do tend to relocate do give timely notice to the Commonwealth so that we have the time to evaluate whether we take back the funds. Basically, we don't want them leaving in the middle of the night not telling anybody.
Yeah, I'm not sure that answers the question about the sanction.
I would say that most of the state outdoor monies that are given in grant money do have clawbacks.
Right.
It's not only the company's liable, but the county
That's right.
IDA would be liable. So that's how you get that money back.
I mean, and we could spend a long time going through the minutia. I won't do that because I think we've hit that. The other question I had was, sometimes there's not sort of a one-to-one event where one job leaves here and one job appears in this foreign country. You can say, okay, that was a offshoring of a job. Sometimes it's business or factory, in this case, call center closes for any number of reasons, and then some temporal period later, business opens somewhere else. So how do you trigger when this comes in?
Mr. Chairman, I would say to the gentleman that basically this is triggered on the aggregate volume of calls based upon a 12-month period prior to the closing of relocation. Looking at the amendment now on lines, beginning on line 28 of the amendment.
Right, well, what I'm saying is, this says that you intend to move a certain percentage offshore.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, what happens when the call center closes in Delegate Marshall's district? And then 6 months later, the industry changes and the business goes, we're gonna open up a new call center, we're gonna put it in wherever, pick Ireland. Is that imputed by this, or does it have to be an actual decision to say, close here, shift here?
I'm not understanding your question, sir, honestly.
Sure.
I think it has to be an actual decision.
Which then to me makes it not hard to get around. Because if all you gotta do to get around it is go, hey, we're closing our Martinsville location, and then a month later go, hey, we're opening an Ireland location, didn't intend to, then I think you've written out the teeth in your bill. So here's the punchline to me. There's actually some value buried in here, I think. I think we're either gonna spend about a month working to get it right, or have this be something we work on for a while going forward.
Mr. Chairman, I take the gentleman's point. I would be happy to work on this bill going forward. And, you know, again, if I can improve on this, I certainly aim to do that. I think it's important to all of us to protect and maintain the jobs that we have in our localities and to enhance the employment base to the extent that we possibly can.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion. I move that we gently lay this on the table. Well, let's get a second.
Okay. That's got a motion and a second laid on the table, non-debatable. So, all right, all those in favor laid on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Mr. Chair, I'm chair of the Small Business Commission, so if you want to send me a letter, we'll look at it this year in our program.
And I'd be glad to work with the gentleman, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the call, Tom. Thank you all.
No, Mr. Chairman, that's just information for members. They read through the bill. Mr. Chairman and members, as you may recall, we had this bill last year. It is a bill that would provide an opportunity for employment. Those in the workforce, an opportunity to take a breast to. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Employment for victims. Breast milk on the job, Mr. Chairman. We, as you may recall, Delegate Hugo, who chaired the subcommittee last year, we heard a conversation back and forth. Former delegate, now Senator McClellan, weighed in on the matter. Over the off-season, we took time to meet with some folks from the chamber and took some input from other people. We came up with what we felt was language that might potentially have a little bit easier language to work around. Certainly realize there are some folks with some concerns. And with changes in the ACA, obviously, it simply boils down to this, Mr. Chairman, and that is simply this. We hear from a lot of women in my district and throughout the state that express concern that when they're on the job, the only really place where they can go to express breast milk is on the toilet. And this bill just seeks to have an opportunity for somewhere else where a woman can.
So it requires a place?
It requires a reasonable effort to provide a room or other location in close proximity to the work area other than a toilet stall.
Okay. Anybody in favor of the bill? You come forward quickly, please. Yes, ma'am.
Well,
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee, and certainly Delegate Nancy's office and staff for carrying this bill for the third year now. My name is, what's that? Okay. My name is Kate Noon. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a certified lactation counselor. I live in Hanover, and I'm here today representing the Virginia Alliance for Breastfeeding Laws, which is a grassroots organizing group that has been working on breastfeeding and other legislation related to the childbearing years for the last 3 years in Virginia. I also serve on several local and state public health coalitions who work to support, promote, and protect breastfeeding, and we are seeking support of House Bill 2210 to address a workplace issue that is all too familiar to those of us who work in the breastfeeding world on a daily basis and work with these breastfeeding families across the Commonwealth. Hopefully you all had a chance to review some of the personal stories that were submitted earlier this week. That was one of the things people asked for last year, was examples of where this is happening. That's kind of how things go with breastfeeding unless you do it yourself or you have a wife or a sister or a daughter or a coworker who does this. Most people don't know much about breastfeeding at all. So I appreciate you all taking time to listen to this. But in those personal stories, we had women who were doing things like pumping in their cars, pumping in restrooms, women who quit their jobs because they had a child who had allergies or sensitivities to some of the common ingredients and formulas, and therefore their only nourishment for their child was breastfeeding, so they left the workforce. And certainly have other people who went to formula feeding, but at the cost of hundreds of dollars a month for their families. So there is an economic impact there. I want to highlight a few quick points. We do currently have the federal law which protects hourly workers but not salaried. 28 other states and the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico have enacted laws to fill the loophole that is leaving out the salaried women. So there is precedent in other states to do this. The federal law does come to us solely through the ACA, which amended the Federal Labor Standards Act. And so if that is repealed, there could potentially be no rights for hourly or salaried women in Virginia. So passing this law would let us get that in place to prevent issues down the road. This is an economic issue, as I mentioned. It helps keep women in the workforce. It increases family economic stability and reduces the numbers of families who are leaving the workforce and then becoming citizens in the Commonwealth who are receiving public assistance like unemployment and WIC benefits and other public assistance of that nature. We do have some precedents of showing that with enacting laws like this, it can work. The 2015 Breastfeeding in Public Law has been enacted, and we're not seeing lots of issues. There's not a glut of lawsuits or anything like that in the system as a result of that. Delegate O'Quinn actually worked on legislation in 2014, very similar to this, which provided this protection in public schools for students, employees, and teachers. And the Department of Education, who are charged with enforcement of that, are not seeing a lot of cases. Essentially, once we have the law in writing and can show it to an employer, this gives the mother the ability to negotiate and come to an agreement. So we're not seeing a lot of this playing out beyond the actual instruction about the law. Additionally, this is a values issue. We have a poll that someone just put up yesterday from the Consortium for Infant and Child Health, which is a collaboration of Eastern Virginia Medical School, Children's Hospital, King's Daughters out in the eastern area of the state. They put up a petition that in less than 24 hours currently has over 1,200 signatures on it. And so that would show vast public support for this bill. And we do have a House Joint Resolution from 2002, which I know Chairman Kilgore did vote in support of, Delegate Bell voted in support of that, Speaker Howell at the time voted in support of that. And that is essentially a resolution that says the same thing, that we want to encourage employers to recognize the benefits of breastfeeding and to provide unpaid break time and appropriate space for employees to express milk. That was 15 years ago. We are asking you today to move this forward and strengthen it by creating a law that we can then help women throughout the Commonwealth work with their employers, and this will be a great benefit to families across Virginia. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, a couple questions.
Yes.
Since the FLSA was amended in 2010, how have the courts interpreted the having to provide a place other than a bathroom? What obligations are on? Have they required employers to make physical modifications, or how's that been extended? Do you know?
That is done on a case-by-case basis. The Department of Labor is in charge of following up with complaints that are filed with regard to that. I can't speak to specific examples, but what we generally see, and the attorney that I work with here in Virginia, who does handle these cases on a pro bono basis, are saying is that generally when you have a law, it allows you to open up the conversation, and the employee is met with more regard from HR because they understand that there is something on the line.
The scenario that I'm just wondering, maybe we'll hear some people testify to it, and like Delegate Kilgore, I don't think I have any problem with this once I understand some of the issues. I could see an employer who qualifies because of the number of employees they have, but if they're spread out over lots of locations, they could have a very small physical space in any given location. And I was just wondering if the federal courts or the Department of Labor had looked at that situation where maybe you have 50 locations with one person in each location, and what you have to then construct for somebody that's qualifying.
Yes, and the federal law does address that. I don't have the language right in front of me.
I have the statute in front of me, but I don't have any interpretations in front of me. So, well, while we think about that one, I just had one other question, just a general question. Is this an attempt to bring the same rules from the FLSA in the state code, or are we deviating anywhere in here in the scope or the application?
This is this is actually a little less stringent than the federal because we've got the language of I'm trying to remember what you had in here this year. I mean, if you're making reasonable efforts,